Hey, good morning, and thanks for being with us today. My name is Steve Smith, and you're watching In and Around Lake Forest. This is a broadcast we do a couple times a month to showcase local businesses, mostly chamber members, so that you know who's doing business in your local city, and you can get an idea of who you might want to develop a relationship with or do some commerce with. We try to mix it up and come on with a variety of different companies, large and small. And today, I think it's going to be an interesting one. Just about everybody that runs a business today is going to want to watch this. And the reason is because since the mid to late 90s, small businesses have been adapting to online marketing. And one of the biggest ones is to have your own website. And interestingly enough, as of this year, only about 72% of small businesses even have a web presence online. So, I would have thought that would have been more like 98 or 100%. Well, it's not. There's 28% of the small business community that still hasn't gotten a presence online with their own website. Now, just because you're one of the ones that have a website doesn't mean it's a good website, doesn't mean it's actually doing anything for your business. It might just be one of these things where, you got you're up there and people see it, but they may not be impressed by it. So one of the guys that we're going to have on here is a web developer, a guy that has really made it his mission to help companies come on that and have websites that don't suck. All right, so we're going to bring on let's see, we're going to bring on a guy named Jeff Fulkerson, and his business is Frobro Web Technologies. And so let me read you a little bit about him. His mission is to rid the world of terrible websites. He started Frobro Web Technologies in 2016 with the goal of helping position local businesses for success online. He believes that every business needs a professional website to centralize their outreach efforts, even if they don't have services that are digital. Okay, so that's important. If you don't have stuff that you sell online, doesn't mean you can't have a website online. So he personally knows the impact of a great website and can have your image on so that prospective people will value and be interested in doing business for what you do. So we're going to bring him on here in a minute. We just need to be able to get him to log on and tell us what he's all about. He hasn't shown up yet, so we're going to just hang out here. Unfortunately, this happens. Hang out here and wait for Jeff to show up in our waiting room. So let's see, what shall we talk about? I started my own website when I opened my own business back in 2008. And I got to tell you, it was an abominable thing. I mean, at that time, I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread because I created it. And as I look back now, because I keep copies of all the websites that I've used over the years, it was terrible. I now know why it really didn't work. And it wasn't until I started hanging around with people that knew what they were doing and really getting a better understanding of what makes a really good website from a look and feel standpoint, from a navigation standpoint, most importantly, from a content standpoint, that so the things you put on there actually resonate with people who are looking for services or products that you make, and might decide after being at your website that you're the kind of company they want to do business with. Interestingly enough, of all the people that have websites out there today, if someone comes on and is not pleased with the way your website operates, and this is almost 40%, they will basically leave and go find a competitor to do business with. And it doesn't take people more than 8 or 10 seconds to be on a website to figure that out. That's real important to have a website that's visually attractive in those first couple of seconds that somebody shows up. And most of the time, it has to do with imagery. Sure, somebody's going to get to the point where they're going to be reading your content, but if the images they see don't resonate with them personally, like, wow, this is the kind of business that understands me, they're probably not going to stay. So high quality pictures definitely add to that. Good titles telling people exactly what you do or what the benefit is of doing business with you are so important, because everybody's got such a short attention span today. It doesn't take them long to read the stuff and figure out, gee, are you the kind of person that they want to do business with? So those are the things that that good web designers can help you figure out. They can help you figure out how to place your home page, because that's where you start. That's where most people enter your website. They see your home page. Now, if they get a link on social media about something very, very specific, some kind of an ebook giveaway or some other kind of special that takes them to more of a landing page, an internal area of your website, they might start there, but eventually they're going to find their way to your homepage because they're probably going to want to know a little more about who you are and what your business does. And so it's real important to have that, and to have somebody that's professional that can help you kind of have an outside pair of eyes looking at that and saying, okay, if I was a customer, this is what I would respond to. This is what I might walk away from. And so having folks like Jeff are important people to have, because they can really help tune up your site. Sure, it's going to be an investment. I mean, you're going to pay money to have it done, but think of all the money that you're going to earn by now having people stay on your website long enough to engage you. One of the biggest things that I did, and this was actually back in March or April of this year, I hired a content specialist, somebody that could actually go to the pages on my site and tune them up from a word standpoint, just make them read better, make them SEO, sensitive. And I was a little skeptical. I thought, okay, how much, what could that possibly mean? So I agreed to do business with this gentleman, and I gave him 7 pages on my site, 7 key navigation pages that most people visited. I went and looked at my Google Analytics and said, okay, here are your top page views. And so I said, okay, do these. And so I gave them over to the guy, and he wrote all the content, and he sent the content in to me on a Word doc and said, okay, you change it. If there's anything I kind of didn't do right, it doesn't sound like you or your business, you change it, but otherwise load this up. So we loaded it up on the website, published it. It takes a couple days, maybe a week or two for Google to get around and kind of have their spiders crawl it and figure out what's new. But you know what? Within about 2 months, it started around the end of June to about the middle of July. All of a sudden, I started getting hits on the site. I started getting the little capture boxes. Gee, if you want to talk to me, put your name and your number and tell me what time's good for you, and I'll reach out and we'll talk. Those are the things that tell me that people are interested enough on my site to actually want to talk to me. You might have a different approach. If you're selling stuff, you want them to go to an e-commerce page and actually order something. That's an indication that somebody likes you enough to actually place an order and do business with you. For me, it's contacting me so we can talk, so I can find out if what they're looking for is something I can help them with. And during that last week of June, middle of July, I was amazed at the amount of traffic I was starting to get. And the only thing I could pin it to, because I didn't do anything different, I didn't change videos or pictures or add anything or delete anything. I just waited to see what the content specialists were going to bring forward. And I uploaded that page by page, kept hitting on Google saying, hey, go back and look at this stuff. There's new stuff there. And I did it. And I was absolutely floored. And I have to tell you today, that's what, 6 months later, that whole expenditure for just redoing the words, the content on those key pages has paid for itself 10 times over. And I have a pretty good website. It's been cultivated over a number of years. So I've kind of figured out what people like and what they don't like. But for someone who has a website that looks kind of like a tombstone, they're not getting anything. I mean, they're basically, it's just out there saying, this is who I am, I'm in business, but there's no other interactivity. If you just adopt to a fully functioning website that draws people in and gets them to either ask questions or give you information to contact them or do something like that, you would be absolutely amazed at how quickly you will recoup the investment that you made to your website. All right, so it looks like we have Jeffro online here, but for some reason I can't pull him up. All right, let me see. Let me try. Okay. Oh, in the waiting room. Okay. All right, looks like we got him on now. Jeffro.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man.
All right, there we are.
Hey, listen, my apologies for it taking too long, but for some reason, the little button that says you're in the waiting room completely vanished, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I finally started looking around on the bottom, all the little icons, and I thought, oh, gee, there he is. So I gave you a really good intro, and I talked a little bit about the value of having a great website, even though I'm not a web developer. So I'm going to be counting on you to help us figure out how to take a website that sucks and make it look a little better.
Sounds good. I was actually watching your intro on Facebook, so just I'm glad we can talk to each other and talk about it. So thanks
All
for
right,
having me.
cool. All right, so look, why don't you, let's start by just kind of telling us how, I mean, this is a crowded field. You know, I can tell you from a business owner and a consumer, there's a lot of people out there that do this kind of thing. What
Yeah.
encouraged you to kind of step into it and to, you know, to take a piece of the market for yourself? What was your, you know, what was your inspiration for doing this?
Well, I mean, I've always loved computers and technology, and that's kind of been my thing. So I studied programming in college, and from high school on, I'd build computers and make websites for, my parents or family, friends, or whoever. And I always would kind of do it on the side. So at a certain point, I was like, I should make an actual business out of doing this. And so I did, and I was able to dedicate more time to doing that. So I started just doing web design. But I quickly realized people don't want a new website, they want more customers. And so that's when, and
Bingo,
so
you got it.
yeah, and so some people think there's a magic link between updating a website. Now, a website is a piece of the puzzle, obviously,
Right.
but it's not the only piece. And so I added additional services after that, SEO, helping with lead generation and email marketing and such, so that I can help with more pieces of the puzzle, right? So I'll fix the website so that it looks good, it represents them well, it has calls to action and leads people to do what you want them to do. But then we also help get people to that website, because it doesn't
Gotcha.
matter how great it looks if nobody ever sees it.
Okay. All right. And I'm also interested in the name of your company. I mean, I think it's an interesting name. I'm obviously getting the picture now from the icon on the wall in the back and your own hairstyle that it has
Yes,
something to do with your hair.
that's right. Yeah, I didn't actually know I had curly hair until high school. I always had a crew cut. So my
Ah,
mom
okay.
told me I should grow out my hair. So I finally did. And turns out I had a fro that everyone loved. I've got really thick hair and people notice it, right? So I'd be walking through the hallways, high school, somebody would reach out and touch my hair. I'm like, who was that? I don't know. But it got me attention. It made me stand out and I was different. And that's like the connection is that a website should be doing the same thing for your business. It should grab people's attention, draw them in, and be something that sets you apart. So that's why, from my experience, knowing what a fro can do for the perception of you and, your image, essentially, it does the same. A website does that for your business. And so that's how I approach it. So yes, it's got to load fast, but it also has to look good and do its job. So that's the analogy there.
Interesting. All right. So since this program and you as a specific guest today is really designed to help, you know, everybody out there in our community and Orange County in general, kind of learn what they should be doing with their own business website. Can you kind of give us a rundown in terms of if you were looking at somebody's website, what would you be looking for to be able to say, okay, this is good, or this sucks, we need to change this? What should they be evaluating their own website? Because I'm sure if they're going to be interested in having somebody fix it and you're the kind of guy they would want to work with, they've got to have some idea of how bad it is to start with.
Right. And it depends on the website, right? Because some are very obvious. Okay, you haven't touched this in 20 years, or you you did a free template once and never looked back. Uh, but in order for a website to be effective, there are several things that need to be in place. So number one, it needs to look good, right? It needs
Mhm.
to look professional, because like it or not, people are going to judge you based on your website. If you have an old, outdated website, people are going to assume that you don't put in the attention to detail and the quality and the services that you provide. They make that subconscious connection, even though it's probably not true. You're maybe too busy in your business doing a good job to focus on the website, but
Right.
people associate that. And so it needs to look good. And they want to know that you're there to stay, right? That if you're a family owned business, if you've been in business 50 years, you need to be highlighting that and talk about what sets you apart, why people would want to hire you as opposed to just listing the stuff you do, because everybody does that, right?
Right.
So make sure they know you're not a fly-by-night organization. You're here to stay. Show that you bring quality, and that starts with the design. So then there's the messaging, right? How you actually talk about your business on your website, and more importantly, how you talk to your prospects. You need to understand who your customers are and their problems, so that you can explain their problems to them. Because when they know that you understand their problems, they feel like, okay, that's the guy that can help me.
Right.
So yeah, you can't just list, I do XYZ, I repair air conditioning.
Right.
That's great. You can
Right.
have that on there somewhere, but you need to talk about the solution and how you fix that problem. Take the pain away, right? And then there's the actual performance of the site. Not everybody has high-speed internet. A lot of people are on shared lines, which get bogged down at certain times of the day. If their neighbor is streaming a lot, or somebody in the other room, is doing a
Okay.
video conference, it can slow down the time that it takes for your website to load. So you need to do everything you can to make your load time really fast, because
Interesting.
otherwise people are going to leave. If they're
Yes.
just browsing around trying to find a local company and your website gives them a little spinny wheel, they're going to get frustrated and move on. Attention
Well,
spans are really short these days.
when you figure that when people go on a site, it takes them about 8 to 10 seconds to figure out if they're going to stay there because what they're looking at resonates with them or not.
Mhm.
How long do you think it takes people in that spinning wheel system to just check out and go someplace else if they're not getting a connection to your site?
It gets easier and easier every day for people to move on, because we're training ourselves to think this way, right? If you look at Twitter and TikTok, everything is getting to shorter and shorter attention spans, and it's so easy to just swipe to the next video or scroll to the next option, that people don't give you a few seconds to come up and show your proper site. There's like, whatever, close, next. And
Interesting.
so you really need to get that down to a couple seconds at most.
Interesting. Um, do you have any, this is kind of a loaded question, so I'm going to serve that up right off the bat. But, there's folks like you who do this professionally, who know the ins and outs, who understand how Google reads these kind of things, and you can kind of create a site like that. What about all the people out there that attempt to do their own thing, with all these DIY platforms out there that let you put something together? Um, will you work on a DIY site, or do you only want people to have a site that's being professionally built?
Well, I prefer working like redoing the site. If it's that bad, and I'd rather just start from scratch than try to patch up what's there.
Right.
That being said, I do want to help business owners be successful, and I understand that budget can sometimes play into these factors. Deciding to buy a $5,000 website versus doing it yourself. I totally get that. So I'd say it's definitely important to have a website, much better than not having one. So do what you can with that, and then when budget allows, you can upgrade it and improve it over time. Just don't stay with that template site, because that's the problem, right? When people look at it like it was made 10 years ago, okay, that really shows.
Right.
Some of the platforms are getting better, like Wix and Squarespace. They've added more options to let you tweak a few things like the SEO title on your page and stuff like that, but you're never going to have full flexibility like you would with something like WordPress, and someone who's managing it for you who can customize it to your heart's content. So wherever you're starting, it's fine, but there are definitely differences between that free site and a professional site. So we can
Right.
dive into some of those. I touched on a few, but yeah, no one's going to be an expert in all those things. So if you work with an agency, they do have experts in all those things. That's why it's
Right.
more expensive, because they've got the graphic designer, they got the copywriter, you've got the webmaster who can optimize it. And so you get all of those things done for you, as opposed to you trying to go learn all these things and become an expert in 4 different fields that you didn't really care about in the first place.
Right. All right. So back when I got into starting the business I have today, and it was kind of learning just pretty much how you do everything on the internet, and it was 2008. Okay. So
Okay.
I started off with a blog site on
Mhm.
on WordPress, because that at that time, writing articles and distributing them everywhere was kind of the, that was the entry level strategy for small business owners. And as I got a little better and understood a little more about what was actually going on out there, and started making friends with a lot of web designers, what I realized were some kind of industry terms like black hat and white hat.
Mhm.
And of course, with time, Google has gotten a whole lot smarter, and they've figured out how to penalize people for doing the kind of things that we did, 15 years ago, which you could
Right.
get away with and you can't do today. So if you're working with a web designer who may be a little edgy about how they do stuff, what should a business owner know about or be able to understand about their website that could get them in trouble in the pursuit of trying to make their site, more visible to Google and rank higher, and because you get every once in a while you get people saying, gee, we can get your site to rank in 7 days on page 1, which is kind of a fallacy today, but a lot of people buy into that. So how do
Right.
people know what to look for to make sure they're choosing an honest, reputable website developer like yourself?
And that's a great question. And I've talked to so many people who have gotten burned by agencies or freelancers who just, charge them month after month. And they're like, oh, it's working. Just wait, it takes a while. Yes, SEO does take a while, but you should be seeing progress, right? So a few things. You touched on like the black hat tactics. That effectively refers to trying to trick the search engines or game the system. So keyword stuffing was a big one, right? So if you want to rank for a certain keyword, you'd put it on your page as many times as possible, every title and headline, every other paragraph. And Google's gotten smarter, like you said, and so now they'll penalize you for that. Now you're never going to get fined or anything for doing this, but you get slapped on the wrist in terms of your ranking goes down because Google knows you're trying to cheat. Ultimately,
Now you're
Google
on
wants to.
page 9.
Yeah, exactly. And so that hurts your business.
Right.
Ultimately, Google's goal with making the algorithm updates is to provide the best results to a person's query when someone goes to google.com and types something in. And so they have a lot of ways of figuring out if your site is good. And so the best way to make sure you're not, upsetting Google is by writing good content that's designed for your users. Now, yes, there are a few things you can go in to do to help tweak it to make sure you tell Google, hey, this is what I'm doing. Did you notice? But it's not like you're trying to trick it, because
Right.
what happens is you might get away with it for a little while, for a month or two, but then they'll say, oh, we got to shut that down. They'll change the algorithm, and now boom, you're
Right.
slammed back down. So the best long-term strategy is not to trick Google, because that won't work. You just need to serve your customers in the best possible way.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's good advice, because when you said keyword stuffing, I remember that. I mean, some websites that I was introduced to, you couldn't get past the first screen because the words didn't make any sense. They had
Right.
keywords, every third, fourth word was a keyword, and it was just aggravating to try to get through it. So I think that's good advice for people who might still think something like that actually works. Um,
Right.
what kind of things should owners be thinking about? Because here's the other thing I've realized in working with people in your profession. You're designing this thing, you're building it out, you're making it so that it's going to go live at some point, but you have to rely on the client to give you information to put in there. And that
Yeah.
can be the biggest frustration for folks on your end, is waiting for them to give you the content, and oh my God, is the content good enough to publish? So what do you
Right.
do in your business to help your clients get through that hurdle of, oh my God, I have to give him all the content for my business?
Well, I try to set expectations up front. So in my proposal and in my contract, I say, okay, this is what I estimate it will take, assuming you give me the stuff I need when I ask for it. And I include there's a clause in my contract, just from the business side, like, hey, if you haven't given me stuff, I can start charging you, at the appointed time, even though I said, okay, it was 8 weeks and you're still dragging your feet. Okay, you still have to pay for the site. I'll still do it when you get me the stuff, but that kind of helps motivate people to actually go through it. And most business owners, they want their site to be done. They're just
Right.
busy. And so having more touch points is what I try to do along the way. Some customers are totally on top of it and they get it. They say, okay, I'll get this stuff to you as fast as I can. Others need a little more pushing and coaching, and me reminding them like, hey, we really need that to get this live. And so it's just kind of staying on top of them for that and making it easy. So providing them a Dropbox link or Google Drive link, whatever, giving them a list of things that we need up front, which I try to do when we start a
Oh, that's smart.
project.
That's smart.
So like, this is the type of stuff we're going to need. Start collecting that. Get this to me while I'm, starting the setup over here. So it kind of greased the skids essentially. So I haven't
Interesting.
had too many problems with it, but it does come up now and then.
All right, so let's say somebody contacts you and they have a bookkeeping service,
Hmm.
and maybe they've either never had a website, they've just had like a local listing, but they don't really have a presence on the internet that tells people who they are and what they do and how they do it. So they say, we need to have a website. How would you help that bookkeeper determine how extensive the site needs to be? Because, some people will build just a one-page landing page and call it a day. And other people get like crazy with, the drop downs and all the back end pages. And, now the site's got a lot of weight to it. So how do you help people who may be part of that 28% of the population that doesn't have a website up there figure out what's the right kind of website for them?
Well, I'd plan an in-depth meeting at the beginning of any engagement where I try to draw out this information from them, because a lot of times they don't know either. They just know I need a website, I want a website, right? And so I ask them a lot of questions about their business and what their goals are for the website. Why do they actually want it? Because a website can serve a lot of functions. It can serve as just a placeholder for information, with your hours, a contact form, and the services. Okay, that's easy. Or, are you talking to prospective customers? Is it for existing clients? Are you trying to attract investors? Are you going to sell products on the website? And in some cases, you're doing all of these or a few of them.
Right.
And so we need to understand that going into the project so that we know the scope of it. And so that when they look at it, in 2 months and say, hey, this isn't doing what I want it to do, it's like, well, that's why. If we don't know where we're going, we're never going to get there. So we have to establish that up front. Okay, this site is going to be for prospective customers. You want an area for existing clients to log in where you'll get them these resources. Okay, so we'll have this login link here. Members can ignore the stuff for the prospective customers, blah, 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 right? So you need to define that up front, and then we can build it, and then you can test it. And, at that point, you'll have everything you need to accomplish those goals.
Interesting. Let's say somebody contacts you and they've had a website out there for 10 years. Okay. Haven't really done much to update it, covers all the minimal bases. Maybe it's got, a lot of them in it and it hasn't really been that well thought out, but it's a website. It's on, it's on Google. If they called you up and said, you know what, I need to understand what I have here before I make a decision about having something completely new built, can you evaluate what I have and kind of tell me what's good and what's not? Is that a service you provide?
Yes, and I would call that a redesign project as opposed to just a design project from scratch. And there's often going to be things we can reuse in terms of content that was written on the pages.
Right.
Even if we change the design and layout, we can still incorporate some of the same elements that were there before. We'll just make them load faster, look better, and add the things that are missing to make it more conversion oriented if that's the goal, or provide the resources up front, whatever they need it to do. When there's an old site like that, I'm going to spend some time upgrading the backend to make sure it's going to run faster using the latest version of PHP. The plugin updates are all there, so we don't have security holes, stuff like that, on top of doing the design updates and making sure all of the content elements are in place.
Right. All right. So here's a little bit of a technical question, and I'm kind of asking more for myself. Probably other people out there would want to know it as well. But every once in a while, I'll run into an article that talks about, and again, correct me if I don't get this acronym right, but I think it goes like WC3 compliance. Does that make sense? It's almost like a certificate of, is your website designed according to standard web practices from some world agency that I've never met before? But is there such a thing out there? And is it important for an owner of a website to have or to know about?
So W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium. So they publish a bunch of standards so that people can refer back to those and make sure that they are doing things in, as best practices, essentially.
Gotcha.
So it can be helpful for professionals to know what's out there and what the latest, suggestions are. But as a client, you don't necessarily need to know all those things because that's not the kind of compliance that you need to worry about in terms of legal issues like GDPR stuff or HIPAA compliance if you're a medical facility or something.
Right.
Those are separate, and those obviously are important to make sure that you're complying with those as you're building out a website if you're taking in patient information, for example. So it's really just a helpful thing. There are validators, so this could be a tool if you wanted to check if some freelancer, if they know what they're doing, you could run their stuff through a validator. Most sites aren't going to be 100% perfect, but if they've got a lot of red flags or failures, then maybe you find somebody else.
Interesting. Okay. And the other thing that I know is surfacing more in terms of, it's probably larger websites, certainly government websites. I don't know that it's leaked down into the small business arena yet, but it's the whole idea of I think it's accessibility. So if you have
Mhm.
somebody that is, that has a site problem, you've got to have a way to communicate, or for them to be able to understand what's on your screen. If you have somebody that can't hear, they've got to be able, everything's got to have some kind of, kind of captioning. Is that something that a small business website that's out there now has to worry about being compliant over?
So ADA compliance is not required for certain small businesses. They have there's a delineation in terms of either the amount of revenue you take in or the number of employees that you have, and then it becomes a requirement for you to have that on your website. So
Mm,
most small businesses don't need to worry about it. Obviously, you can do it proactively. It
right.
doesn't hurt anything because you're helping people that might have issues with their eyesight or maybe hearing. So what it does is it puts a little widget on your site that you can enable high contrast mode, and so then it's easier for them to read. Or there's a text reader that will, out loud read the text on the screen for them. Things like that that make it a little easier for people to use.
And is that a feature that as a business grows and all of a sudden kind of finds themselves in the arena of, oh, gee, I have to be compliant? Is that like an app add-on kind of thing, or do you basically have to redesign the site to include that?
It's usually an add-on. So in most cases, you don't have to redesign the site as long as your starting point is relatively good. If
Right.
you have an old site and try to throw that on top, it probably won't work at all. But if you keep your site up to date with the latest updates and you're using reputable plugins from developers that know what they're doing, should be fine. Now, guidelines do change on an ongoing basis. So when you do start doing an ADA compliant solution, you're going to be paying for a monthly upkeep on that, so that
Okay.
when something changes, it can be updated on your site. Or if you add a new page, it can be reviewed to make sure that that
Interesting.
still complies.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know, because I didn't realize it was more of a subscription thing, as a like an annual compliance payment. You're good to go, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how often you want to do it, but the bigger you get, the more closely you need to pay attention to it.
All right, so let's move and talk a little bit about imagery on sites, because I know even though content is important, everybody
Mhm.
today seems to gravitate towards what looks good, videos, things of that nature. And, I'm in the professional service arena, so I don't actually have a hard product to sell. Okay. Some people do.
Mhm.
They sell, training programs and things you can download and work with. I don't. It's just my service. So for everybody that might be in that same kind of area, is it important, and the reason I ask this is because I'm amazed at how many sites don't have this kind of stuff. Is it important that on that site somewhere people see the person who owns the business, your picture, or somehow they realize that you are the owner, you're a prime principal or a partner of it, as opposed to
Mhm.
just having the content of what you do, but have no evidence that you are actually connected to the business?
Yeah, it's important to have yourself on there, especially if you are the business, you're the consultant, you're the coach, you need to be on there. So having an about page that goes into a little more detail about you, it makes you a real person too, right? A lot of people want that human connection. They want to see your professional entity, sure, but they want to know that this is a person I think I could work with,
Mm,
as opposed to just some nameless or faceless name, that they see on the page.
right.
And Google does actually look at the about page too to see if you have information about your team. And that actually is a good thing in the eyes of Google, because again, you're representing yourself fully, transparently to whoever's looking for your company and information about you. You're not trying to hide anything.
Okay, that's good to know, because I do run into a lot of websites where, for whatever reason, either they didn't think about it, they purposely decided they didn't want any of their own pictures on the site. You can go through the entire site from homepage to everything else, and there's no evidence that you're seeing an individual. It's just all content and deliverables and descriptions of
Right.
services, things like that.
Well, and think about like phone trees and stuff. We all hate talking to robots. We want to get to a person as quickly as possible in most cases.
Right.
So just by putting it there, you're showing, okay, I'm a real person. You'll be able to talk to me and we can work together.
All right. So earlier in this conversation, you had, I think it was kind of in passing, you had made a comment about, your website's kind of like your home base. and you really need to have other things out there on the internet to point people back to your site.
Mhm.
That's where kind of the traffic comes from. So when you help somebody with a site, can you also assist them with the other things out there in cyberspace that which they should consider having set up to cast a wider net?
Yeah, definitely. So getting the site right is step one, but then there are so many other channels and ways to get people to the site. So that can be a part of the conversation of, okay, in your business, who are your primary customers and where are they, right? Where are they in the world, online, and then how do we get you in front of them? So sometimes that means going to Facebook groups and joining and posting content or inviting people to a webinar that you're doing, something like this. That's a way to get in front of people. So the Lake Forest Chamber, you now are connected to other businesses. So if your target market is business owners, hey, it's a good place to be. Social media, it kind of expands on that, right? So you can build up a following, or if you're on a platform like TikTok, you don't need a following. You can just produce good content and people will see it that are in your target market. And there's always running ads on Facebook or Google or print ads, putting something on the side of a bus. Like, those are all options for any business, but they're not good choices for every business. So that's
Right.
why you need to understand who you're going after and where those people are, and then you make a plan around that. And in some cases, yes, you have multiple channels going at the same time. You can be running Google ads and flyering and going to networking events. That's all fine. But every time you send something out, whether it's that flyer or your email signature, your business card, it's got your website on it. So that's why I talk about your website as the hub of all your marketing efforts. Everything comes back there. That's why it needs to look good and it needs to do its job, because otherwise you wasted your effort and your money getting people to the site.
And one of the things I think is a problem for a lot of people who recognize they have to have a site, and maybe they do, but they haven't really committed themselves to online marketing to a great degree. They want evidence that there's a website out there that they can point people to. How many clients do you work with that you find out that even though they've built out a basic site, they have no call to action or any place for people to go once they've gone to the site and learned about what the business does and may have some interest, but there's like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah, there's a lot of sites like that, because if it's not something you've studied in terms of marketing, then you don't think that way. And you're just thinking, okay, I got to let people know what I do, where I am, how they contact me. And that's a good start. But if you want to increase the amount of conversions that you get from the visitors to your site, you need to kind of guide them towards that end goal. You need to make those buttons obvious and not have so many that they don't know what to do and do nothing, right? So you need to pick that one goal for that page and lead them to that, and write your messaging to kind of nurture them towards that end goal.
All right. So since 2016, that's when you officially started, Frobros, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
In that 6-year time frame, what have you learned as a business developing websites that people should know about? I mean, we all kind of go through these, highs and lows about what we get done, what we fall short on, what we learn is like the real way to do it versus what we thought. And so I'm just talking from a business standpoint, from a business owner standpoint. What did you go through in developing your business that you can look back on and say, wow, that was a huge learning point for me?
Um, I mean, there's a couple different things we can talk about there. I'd say, I mentioned I started in one area, web design, and I noticed the needs of my clients and expanded from there so I could better serve my clients. So I added a hosting and maintenance package, so that way I can keep taking care of their site on an ongoing basis, right? Make updates. Occasionally they need to add functionality or new pages. Great, I can now do that for them.
Right.
But then I added an SEO, because obviously we want to make sure their sites are being found. So I can help with SEO. And so I've expanded my options, and my skill sets, and brought in partners where necessary and team members, so that I can keep doing that and provide an even better option for my customers, so they don't have to keep looking everywhere for piecing together, like, okay, I've got my hosting here, I've got my SEO here. They can just go to one place and know it's all taken care of. So that's
Right.
been kind of my approach in figuring out ways I can better serve my existing customers while also growing my brand and my business at the same time.
Okay. And for the customers that you get,
Mhm.
where do they typically come from? And the reason I ask this is because in my own business development, I found out over time that the way people come to me is not anything close to what I thought.
Mhm.
I thought they would have, referrals and, people that they knew or people I knew in some way. There's a connection there, and business cards got traded. And what I realized was most people who end up needing services that I provide, they don't know anybody that's ever had a coach before. And so they go out on Google and just type in a few words, and hopefully I
Mhm.
show up, and sometimes I don't. So
Right.
how do people find you if they don't know you personally or don't know your business and immediately say, gee, I needed a website, I'm going to call him? How do they come to you?
Well, when I first started, it was just referrals and talking to people, networking. But then once I decided, okay, I need to give this a little more intentionality if I wanted to ever grow, and so that's when I started marketing, essentially, my own business. And so since I offer marketing services to my customers, I view myself as the guinea pig. So I've done all the things, and I've tested contact form robots. I've done cold email outreach, uh, email marketing campaigns, social media accounts. So I've run paid ads, all these things I've done. So I have gotten customers through TikTok and through email campaigns
Okay.
and posting in different groups and things. So I've gotten them all over the place. At this point, it's more of my outreach efforts. I've gone on podcasts, things like this, and joining different groups where I can kind of present and let people know this is what I do and this is how I can help you. And that's what ends up being the most effective for me, is letting them see me and that I
Yes.
know what I'm doing and how I can help them, as opposed to just another ad or something. But they all can work. It's just a matter of refining them for your business and the message. If you get that right for your target customer, then any channel can work for you.
That's interesting. So just out of curiosity, what's the most unusual place or circumstances that you've acquired a client?
Unusual.
Coming from a source that you just didn't see, it just wasn't on your radar, but they made contact and you ended up doing business with them.
Yeah, I've had people who just found me on Google for searching something random, and then they just email me out of the blue, and I don't even need to pitch them really. They're just like ready to hire me. Like, here's my project. How can we do it? All right, great.
That's
And so
cool.
it's still cool, yeah, and it's surprising sometimes too, because you're like, oh yeah, this stuff works.
Yeah, I've got evidence now that it actually works. All right, so is there anything that you wanted to mention or talk about that I didn't tee up with a question?
Sure. Yeah, there's actually uh, I want to rid the world of terrible websites. So I'm going to
I
let
thought that was
people
a
have a
great
few
that was a
tools.
great way to start your bio, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to make sure people know what that means, right? So if you're looking at your website, there are a few things that are common frustrations that you should be able to fix. These are fixable problems. So number one is load time. We talked about that a little bit earlier,
Mhm.
um, because people just leave or they get frustrated, and then they really take out that frustration on you, right? Because you're making them wait. You
Right,
know, we have to wait so often in line or on hold and things. We don't want to have to wait more.
right.
So it's just you're making them frustrated. So do what you can to improve the site loading time. So there are things like improving your web host or upgrading your web host. So never use shared hosting. Yes, it's the cheapest. It's the cheapest for a reason, because essentially your website is now bunking with other websites. You're fighting over the blankets and the pillows. That's the the memory and the processor essentially. And sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. So sometimes your website takes a lot longer to load and there's nothing you can do about it. But you're also exposed to each other. So if one of the other sites gets hacked, you're going to get hacked too, because all they need to
Oh,
do is go to one folder next door, and now they can inject whatever code they want into your website.
oh,
So just
interesting.
because some other guy didn't put a good password on his site or something, now you get to suffer for it. So um, never use shared hosting. Go one level up, make sure you got some dedicated resources. If you own your own servers, great, host it there, that's fine. But that's step one. Make sure your web host is fast. And then you can add on layers to that, like caching. You can use a CDN. Make sure you've got browser caching turned on. You've got static page caching on the server end. All these things just make your page come up a little faster, so that instead of running code each time, to determine what's on the page, you've already done that once and say, okay, here it is, and it can come up a lot faster.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and there's a lot of things I can dive into on load time, but I'll jump to the next one is missing menu items. So this goes back to user experience, right? So this frustrates users if they can't find what they need. So if you are sending people to your website, maybe from your email or a flyer with a promotion or something, or even just to pay a bill or something, make sure the button is where you say it's going to be and the verbiage is the same, it matches, and so that the experience matches the expectation, because that's something else that really frustrates people. You know, if I try to go pay a bill and it says, okay, enter your region, like, but it's a drop-down menu and my region's not there, like, what am I supposed to do? I now hate this company, right? So
Right.
you don't want to give these opportunities for people to stop liking you or go give them a reason to find a competitor. So that would be the next thing, is make sure your menu items, you're not getting too clever. You're just simple, straightforward, make it easy for people to find what they need. And then the last one I'll mention for now is pop-ups. You know, nobody likes pop-ups. They can be used occasionally, but they're very often overused. And let me give a couple examples of, you know, what's a good or bad example. So if I go to a web page, I'm searching for something, right? Maybe I want to find a resource or an article, and right away I get to the page, bam, there's a pop-up. You just interrupted me. I was here to read this, and now you're jumping in front of my face asking me for something. You know, now I'm annoyed. So if you're going to use a pop-up, there's a couple of things you need to do. Number one, don't show it right away. Give them a chance to do what they came to do, to at least settle into the page. Maybe wait until they've scrolled 3/4 of the way down the page before showing them the pop-up. Maybe put it in the corner instead of right in the middle. And then make sure you're adding something of value with that pop-up. So don't just say, you know, sign up for our email list. Okay, why? Make sure you're giving them something. So sign up for our
Yeah.
email list, and you'll get 50% off your first order.
Right.
Something like that. Oh, okay, sure, I'll do that. Now this is an add-on. This is a bonus. Like, now I want to do that, right? It's not like an interruption that you're just asking for something. You're providing additional value after you've let them do what they came to do. And the last thing I'll say about pop-ups is, when someone clicks the X to dismiss it, don't show it to them again on the next page. Wait at least a week before you show it to them. So you need to honor that dismissal. There's that subconscious understanding that we listen to our customers, we respect your wishes, and you're not just going to be shouting them down every step of the way.
And
So
you know, one of the worst nationally syndicated magazines that is just absolutely horrendous with pop-ups, it's Forbes.com. You go on there, you get halfway through the first part of an article, and man, they're just slamming you left and right. And so as a result, I don't go on the website anymore because I just don't want to deal with that.
yeah, and recipe sites too, I find, are some of the worst. If you've ever tried to look at a recipe on your phone, there's like maybe this much of the recipe, and I'm like trying to scroll around and close out the ads, and I just have to give up after a while. So
Right.
it's just not a good user experience.
Well, those are, I mean, look, those are, I think those are great points, because from the reverse end, somebody is probably telling that owner, oh, gee, you need to have a pop-up here to get their attention on this, this, and that. And they're not thinking about the user experience. They're just thinking about, how can I optimize my website and get people to do what I want them to do.
Right. There's a balancing act with any of these things, right? So even SEO, let's say you want to rank for a certain term, don't just mess up your headline. You know, we spend a lot of time figuring out what a good headline would be that would speak to our target customer. And then the SEO guy says, oh, okay, instead of, you know, websites that load fast, let's say a foothill ranch company that makes websites that load fast. Okay, but it doesn't have the same impact for the user, right? Now you're building your site for the computers instead of for the people. So there are ways to do for both without ruining the experience for the human, because at the end of the day, it's the humans that are going to pay you, not the computers. So the computers help people find you, right? So there's a little bit of a balancing act there.
All right, so here's another thing that shows up in the way of a pop-up, but it's gaining more and more popularity with all manner of sites out there. And it's the whole chatbot thing. You know, it's AI, it's, you know, some computer software that's learning how to be a human so they can help you with your questions. Are you a proponent of that, or is it kind of a case by case?
I'd say case by case. I actually have seen that it's done well for a lot of business owners to provide that additional level of engagement. And so people feel like they can connect to someone quicker. But I'd say some of the same rules apply to the pop-ups, right? If you're going to just pop it up immediately right in front of them, that's annoying. But if they know it's always there in the corner without being too intrusive, that's helpful. And people like that. They like knowing that if they need
Hmm.
something, they can just chat right there. And that's almost less of a commitment on their end, as opposed to filling out a contact form or scheduling a 30-minute appointment.
Right.
And so you can actually get more people in the door through that chat bot because it's the lower barrier to entry. So as long as you're not, annoying them with it, it's helpful.
Okay. All right. So as we close out today, is there any final thoughts? But by the way, I mean, I'm sure people that are watching this or will watch the replay will be very interested in chatting with you or learning more about you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So my website is frobro.com. If you go to frobro.com/contact, you can send me a message. Also throughout the website, there's buttons where you can schedule a free call with me, and we'll do a review of your site or talk about what we could do to potentially help your business when it comes to digital marketing. So yeah, I'll always do a free call with you guys. Also on social media, I'm at FroBroWeb on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. So on TikTok, I've actually done a few interviews, and I'll be moving these to YouTube as well. But if you're a business owner that wants to be featured on one of my channels, I do a little segment called Grow with the Fro, and I'll interview you about your company and get some of your advice to share with other business owners.
Do you, in order to get on that program, do you have to have hair?
No, I have the Fro, we can grow together.
I was
So it's
going to
fine.
say, oh, there you go. All right, Jeff, listen, this was great. I'm so glad we had you on today because this is a topic that everybody out there doing business big and small may not be thinking about, but probably should be paying more attention to. So it's nice to hear from someone who can put it in kind of layman's terms and just give us information that we can think about and make decisions about where we want to go with our own website. So thank you very much for being on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Folks, that brings us to the end of today's broadcast. We were on with Jeff Fulkerson of Frobro Web Technologies. And so when you're thinking of website development, just think about his hair, because I wish I had your hair, But yeah, it's a great little logo to think about. So, and what he does is really important. And believe me, like I said at the beginning of this show, if you make certain changes to your site, sometimes you can see massive differences in the output. And sometimes it's design, sometimes it's content, but getting somebody like Jeff who can help you figure out for your type of business and the people you're trying to attract, what you should be, focusing on, that's where the value is. That's why having guys like him is worth the money. So hopefully you'll reach out to him and have that conversation about the website you either have now or the website you need to have because you don't have a website. So we will be back the last Wednesday of November. I think that's November 30th. We'll have a guest then. We'll let you know before that happens. I'm gonna try to stack things early because when we get close to Christmas, everybody's doing other things, and I understand that. So thanks for being with us today. We appreciate you. Drop us a comment. We're on the Facebook Chamber page, and drop us a comment. Let us know what you thought about today's program. If you have businesses you'd like to see, let us know that, because we're always looking for guests. And if you're watching us now and you're a Lake Forest Chamber member and you want to be on the program, get a hold of the Chamber office and let us know. We'll reach out to you and tell you how you can do that. So thanks for being with us today, Jeff. Thanks again. We look forward to getting to know you and seeing you at more Chamber activities. So take care.
All right. Thanks again, Steve.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.